Are you DTFF?
Once again, here's Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your host, Jake Trowbridge and Dustin Lunt.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to DTFF. We are happy to have you this evening. We have a wonderful episode. I shouldn't say wonderful. I'll say for myself, Jake, it's probably my favorite episode. We're talking our drinking buddies. These are guys that we are just so hot and bothered about that we are willing to take them out to the bar, buy them a couple drinks because we love them so much. But before we get into all that, I gotta say hi to you, Jake. Say, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. You had me worried for just a minute. You're like, I don't want to call it wonderful. I thought you were going to take a turn to negative town, but you didn't. You took it the exact opposite direction. And for that, I'm appreciative. I'm doing terrific because, yes, this is also my favorite episode of the season. So twinsies on that front. Can't wait to dive into these fellas who, in conjunction with, wanting to maybe take them out for a beer, also maybe want to celebrate every touchdown that they have with the beat. So I'm looking forward to having a lot of those this season after these guys, fingers crossed. But in any case, I'll throw it back to you. How you feeling in advance of Canton weekend?
Oh, I can't wait. The next 2 days it's going to go way too fast at work. It's not going to go fast enough because I can't wait just to hit the road Friday morning and just drive like we're Thelma and Louise, just hand in hand in the vehicle, just all the way out to Canton because it's going to be wonderful. I can't wait. I'm so excited to see everyone. Hopefully people are in for hugs because that's what this guy is going to be given a lot of. So yeah, it's going to be great. I can't wait. Can't wait for it. I could sit and talk about the expo all night.
We can't, sadly. We have other things that we have to talk about, but I'm with you. Hand holding and hugs. That's what this guy over here does, by the way. I think you need to hold my hand as you discuss this beer that you brought to us tonight. So I'm just going to put it out here like that. There we go.
Yeah, so this is P3 Pills. This is from Phase 3 Brewing Company, hence the P3. They are out of Illinois. Their Lake Zurich is their brewery and tap room. So this is just American style Pilsner. Nothing too fancy about it. Nice, easy drinking. 4.7%. What's not to love? It's a solid, just good lager, easy drinking beer.
Clean, clear, no fucking around. Can I tell you my favorite thing about this? Even before I drank it, I'm a simple man. I find joy in very simple things sometimes, but the can itself, not the can art, like not the label, the can itself, it's all black, which I just think is rad as hell. Like even the very top is just all black. I've never seen that before. I find that to be very neat.
That is very neato, as you would say.
As I would, and as I did. Do we want to talk about, there's been rumor mill stuff. I don't know that we have a lot of real news in the NFL, like actual news, do we?
No, I don't think so. But yeah, let's talk some rumors here. That's fun.
All right. Well, the big one, the one I think that is certainly most fantasy relevant is the Brandon Ayuk trade rumors swirling around again. And it seems like it happens every month. It's like a phase of the moon. It just keeps popping back around and then it disappears for a little bit. But recently, it sounds like there's two teams, possibly three, that could be really, really into a Brandon Ayuk trade, the Browns and the Patriots. It seems like the details of them, if they were to pull the trigger, are basically already set in motion. So I understand the Browns would send Amari Cooper, certainly some other things on top of that. The Patriots would send Kendrick Bourne, hopefully a lot more on top of that. And then it seems like the Steelers are back in the mix as well all of a sudden. So from your perspective, look, if we're just doing this for fantasy, what is your fantasy destination for him out of that group?
Do I have to pick one? Like, I don't like any of
Yeah.
these offenses for him. Like, I mean, if I had to choose one, I guess Pittsburgh? Question mark? Like, at
Yeah.
least there you've got George Pickens that will pull some of the coverage away from him, where Cleveland, you got Njoku, if that's your flavor, Jerry
Mhm.
Jeudy, if you're a believer that he can pull some coverage away. New England, it's just a lot of unproven talent. You got the young 2 young wide receivers that they drafted. You got a rookie quarterback. I just don't like either of those, at least for his fantasy value. So I guess if I had to choose one, it would be Pittsburgh. What do you think?
We're weirdly opposite on this one. Pittsburgh's the one I definitely don't want him to go to, and I'll explain why later in this episode, by the way. But I would say if he goes to the Browns and Cooper goes to the 49ers as part of that trade, we know that he's the top dog there. And same with the Patriots. We know that he's going to be the top dog there, at least in year one. Yeah, I don't love either offense. I think the Browns is my preferred destination just because what if Deshaun Watson actually does get it together? Like you said, I'm not a big believer in Jerry Jeudy or David Njoku. And, Amari Cooper did well enough in that offense where I'd be fine with it. I just want him to stay in San Francisco, if I'm being completely honest.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
Tyler in the chat, by the way, absolutely loving this drawn out Ayuk drama episode. Lots of filler for the script writers. The NFL script writers got to get their preseason stuff in, got to set the table for what's to come. So that's always a good time. But yeah,
That's right.
that's the big news.
That's right.
Any other rumors that is outside of the Brandon Ayuk sphere?
Nothing that's caught my eye so far. I mean, there's just as we've talked about previously, there's a lot of the ups and downs of camp. This guy's looking best shape of his life. It's just but nothing to the ilk of a Brandon Ayuk possible trade. So,
That's the hot stuff.
with that being said, should we get into our drunk trade of the week? I know we got a special one this week.
Yes, let's do it.
Drunk, hammered drunk.
Drunk trade of the week.
Normally, at least recently, these drunk trades tend to come to us from Reddit. However, not today, folks. We've got a Twitter submission from one Richard Sickles. Richard, if you're watching, we'll try to be gentle about this. I got tagged in this one here today on Twitter. Richard said, after getting roasted over my trade today, I need Jake Trowbridge to make a song called So You Had a Bad Trade to the tune of Daniel Powter's Bad Day. So you had a bad trade, and etc. Right now, it clearly bashful about this trade, clearly getting abused by his league mates over it. But here's the trade in a 12-team dynasty, super flex, full PPR, tight end premium. This is the offer, and I don't even know which side Richard is on technically. I can guess, but I don't know for sure. Side one is Russell Wilson, all that talent. Adney Mitchell, rookie for the Colts, and a 2025 second-round pick. On the flip side, we've got Kirk Cousins and Rashee Rice. So I assume that Richard is bashful because he got the Russell Wilson side. Is it a clear-cut win-lose for you, Dustin?
I think it is. I mean, when at first blush, I was like, "Well, this isn't that bad of a trade." But once I really started to think about it and mull it over, I was like, "Yeah." And it's not in a super egregious trade by any means. I understand why it was done. It, like I said, not veto worthy. It's not egregious. We've seen way worse trades than this on our podcast here. So, uh, but yeah, I definitely take the Cousins Rice side. You got Rice is worth a Donnie Mitchell and a second, probably, assuming he plays and kind of lives up to the hype that he had last year. I could see that those two kind of canceling out, or it'd be close. Or you could say Russell Wilson and a second for Kirk Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, like, I just Cousins has way more upside in that Falcons offense this year. And Rashee Rice, we saw what he did last year down the stretch, especially as we talked about on the show last week or the week before. Rumors that he may not even be suspended this season. It might get pushed off till next year. So if he plays all this season, I mean, you're getting basically a free season out of him at a discount because people are really discounting him. And Russell Wilson, how much upside is there in that Pittsburgh offense? Don't know. Mitchell, rookie, we don't know what to expect out of that offense with Anthony Richardson. Definitely would be at least at best the number 2 wide receiving option on that team behind Pittman. The second's nice, but 25 isn't shaping up to be the strongest class from what I understand. So it's just like, yeah, it's fine. Like I say, I don't think it's egregious, but I definitely want the Cousins Rice side.
Same. But I will say, I think it's close. It's close enough. Like Adonai Mitchell and that second for Rashee Rice, to me, is equal. That's the equal sign. There's still question marks even outside of the suspension for Rashee Rice. Does Hollywood Brown come in and take over a big chunk of the offense? Does the new rookie, exciting flash master, Xavier Worthy, come in and look like old school Tyreek Hill? No, probably not. But there are question marks about the pecking order now, at least in that offense, that weren't there before. So I think that part's equal. Russell Wilson and Kirk Cousins, hypothetically, both could be one and done this year. Atlanta's come out, or beat writers for Atlanta have come out and mentioned like that. You know, if Kirk doesn't perform at an extremely high level, then they might just move on. They obviously drafted Michael Penix very high in the draft for that reason. Russell Wilson, I like as a sleeper for this year. I don't know how much I've really talked him up on this podcast, but you know, you could do worse this year, I think, as a sleeper, but I'd rather have Cousins. So it's close, but yes, I would also defer to the Kirk Cousins and Rashee Rice side. Richard did not say how much he was drinking, or really even if he was drinking, but just based on his bashfulness, I thought we could at least make it an emotionally drunk trade of the week. Is that fair?
That's fair. I like that.
All right. And now we got it in there, and now we can get it out of there and move on.
Title of your sex tape. Hey-o! All right. Let's move on here. Just get into our drinking buddies. So these are guys, as we said, we're planting our flag on. Other people will call them my guys or, whatever. They're our drinking buddies. We're planting our flags on this year. We think they could be either they're going to be really, really good or maybe have sneaky value that we think would be worth drafting them for. So Jake, I'm going to throw it to you first here. Give us your first drinking buddy.
So kind of you to let me lead off as if that's not what always happens. Kyler Murray is my first drinking buddy of 2024. And I'm going back to the well here because I went back. I sometimes do this just to curiosity's sake, if nothing else, to see who these guys were last year, the year prior. Back in 2022, I also had Kyler Murray as my drinking buddy, but I'm ready for a bit of a revenge tour here. So last year, obviously he was hurt the majority of the season, didn't come back until week 10. So in terms of draftability, there was none for Kyler Murray. But if you picked him up off of waivers deep into the season and had faith, you were rewarded because when he came back from that injury, immediately looked great as a fantasy asset. He finished his QB 9 in points per game from that week on. And he did it without Hollywood Brown for the majority of that stretch. Him and Hollywood Brown played like 2 games together. And he was really relying on Trey McBride, Rondale Moore, and my dude Greg Dortch, basically, to take fantasy managers into the promised land. But he also, despite the injury, was on pace for 94 rushing attempts and 500 plus rushing yards. And that's really where Kyler Murray becomes a steal for me this year in drafts and why I want to leave every single draft with him on my team. You can get into fancier metrics from last year. He was a top 10. They were a top 10 offense, I should say, in expected points above average. yards per play, touchdown drive percentage, all that shit looked great. Again, with a bare bones weaponry around him and that lingering injury issue, which people were still questioning, a couple of games into his return. But long story short, I think Kyler Murray's always been undervalued by fantasy enthusiasts. I feel like he should be treated closer to this top tier of guys. Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, those guys still sort of get that top tier treatment, and Kyler just never does, despite the fact he's never, ever finished worse than QB 11 in points per game. And that was his rookie season. He's got some top 5 finishes sprinkled in. They added Marvin Harrison Jr., one of the best wide receiver prospects of the last decade. And honestly, Zay Jones, I think, is an underrated add here too, just as a deep threat complement to what the rest of the team already does. So you might look at Josh Allen in the second round when you're on the clock and be tempted to draft him. I won't. I'll wait. You might even like Lamar Jackson in the 4th or 5th round. I don't. I'll wait. I will wait until Kyler Murray is there. You can still get him. He's going off the board as QB 10 right now. I'm gonna do it everywhere that I can. And if somebody snipes me, I'm gonna be just boiling over with rage. But what are your thoughts about Kyler Murray this year, Dustin? Agree or disagree on that?
I agree 100%. I think he is a sneaky value. What'd you say? He's QB 10. I mean,
Sure.
he's probably a few spots low for me from where I would be comfortable drafting him. So yeah, I think he's a good value. And he's got the upside. We've seen it before. He's got a little bit of scoot to him. He can run. It's not necessarily his game, but he can if he needs to. You got Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in, and it's wheels up for this offense. I love it.
I would say it is his game. I think it's disingenuous to call this man's ability scoot-worthy. I think he's a tier up from scoot-worthy. You're lumping him in with some of these other jokers that we talk about, like Russell Wilson, and I won't have it. He's got more scoot to him than that, certainly.
Well, he's in a tier of his own then, in between the elite Lamar Jacksons and Josh Allen's, and in between the
500
other
rushing
scoot
yard
guys.
pace last year, man. I'm telling you, it's nice. But now I know that your drinking buddy at quarterback does not have nearly the scoot of Kyler Murray. I think we can both agree on that.
Opposite.
Okay.
Opposite of Scoot. But the one thing we do know about my quarterback is he loves to have brunch with his wide receivers. He loves it. It's his favorite thing. It's Matthew Stafford. I decided to pick Matthew Stafford this year because I think he is being extremely undervalued. He is currently the quarterback 21. You could get him for basically free at the end of your drafts. I don't know that I'd want him necessarily as your QB1, but I think he's going to return extremely great value from that 21 QB. I think he's going to surprise people this year. We got Puka Nacua, breakout candidate last year. Just rookie sensation. Love him. He's getting back Cooper Kupp, who was dinged up for a good portion of the year last year. And so with the healthy Cooper Kupp, hopefully all year. And I mean, I do think Cooper's bouncing back. He could have been one of my drinking buddies this year, I'll be honest, because I think he's a great candidate to return excellent value. But you got Cooper Kupp, Puka, you got Kyron Williams out of the backfield. I think there's just this offense has always been high powered, especially under the coaching staff there. I don't see that changing. And like I said, they were dealing with some injuries last year, and I just see things turning around. Their defense is going to take a step backwards as well, I think. With Donald retiring off that defense, you don't lose a guy like that and not have your defense affected at all, which means their offense will have to be playing catch up more often. And they're not in the easiest division as well. San Francisco, Arizona, as you just mentioned, should be much improved this year. Seattle, for some reason, is always super competitive. So it's just, they could be playing from behind an awful lot this year, which will make for some great games and some great shootout. I think there's a lot of opportunity for this offense. And I think Matt Stafford is going to smash his ADP. Like, he's going to return such great value this year.
First of all, subtle Seahawks shade thrown there. Somehow always competitive. You just got to get your digs in, don't you? Russell's not there
I'm
anymore.
not
He can't
bitter.
hurt us. You don't have to be bitter towards the Seahawks anymore.
He can still hurt me.
Yeah, that's true. He can still hurt me too,
And you
as
know
I'm
what, Jake?
touting him as a sleeper. Yeah.
I'll say too. I was listening to the rewatchables today, and I was listening to the movie Draft Day, where they kind of make fun of Seattle for the draft picks and everything. So maybe that was just stuck in my head too a little bit
It's
subconsciously.
understandable. Great podcast, by the way. Can't recommend that one enough. The only question I have about Matthew Stafford is the same question I have about the whole rest of the offense. Are they okay? Are they all going to be healthy, stay healthy together? Are they going to overlap in that way for the whole season? Stafford's back issues always pop up here and there. Cooper Kupp, like you said, hopefully he is back and fully ready to go. But he's 32 years old. I don't think it's a given. Kyron Williams always seems to be hurt. Tyler Higbee is maybe starting on PUP, I think is what I saw. And then we didn't talk about this at the top of the episode. Puka Nacua apparently does have a very minor knee injury. The coaching staff isn't worried about it. And Sean McVay is very truthful about that kind of stuff. So if he's not worried, I'm not worried. But damn, man, it's just like you're relying on this house of cards and nobody better blow on it. That's all. But going that late, it's not a risk.
Right. I mean, if you really wanted to get into it, you could say that about any team. I mean, injuries happen. You could, like, injuries happen. Like, it's a fluky thing. We don't like to say on this podcast that people are injury prone. So it's just one of those things. It's like, I'll take my chances on this offense, especially if you're taking them really late. You want, say, like with our home league, you basically have to draft a second quarterback because you don't get that many waiver wire picks. So, I mean, if you want to roster a second quarterback, this could be your guy that you could plug in for bye week easily, but then maybe play matchups a little bit more. And if you see a favorable matchup, you could pop him in over your starter, or especially if you're, punting the quarterback position a little bit and taking your first quarterback a little bit later as well, not getting one of those elite guys.
I will say the fact that he's going after JJ McCarthy in drafts right now does make my blood boil a little bit. I mean, that's disrespect. That's
egregious.
Absolute disrespect. Yeah.
So
Jake,
before you move on here with your next one, we got a question in the chat here. I think we should do Superflex Dynasty full PPR start 11 was offered a mid 25 second and a 26 third for Romeo Doubs. What are your thoughts?
I think it's fair. I just traded a single third round pick for Romeo Doubs in one of my dynasty leagues not that long ago. I was very surprised that I could get him for that. I think a second is fair for him, but there's questions and concerns about the pecking order in that offense for sure. That's another team talking about health. We've never really seen those guys all together healthy for very long. So do we know if Romeo Doubs is going to be that exciting for fantasy? I don't know. My money is on Christian Watson and or Dontavian Wicks. So I'm comfortable taking that second and third. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the 26th third doesn't really do a whole lot because that's 2 years out. So, I mean, it's basically a second for Dobbs. And yeah, I mean, I would take that, especially if you're not relying on Dobbs to be one of your top 2 or 3 wide receivers. I know it's start 11, so it's a little bit bigger rosters, but Dobbs shouldn't be your 1 or 2 on the team. So if you can afford to move him, I think that is a good price to be able to do that for.
Yep. I think he's
So,
going to be kind of
thank
frustrating.
you. Yeah, thank you, Yoga-san. Hopefully I said that correctly in the chat. That was great. Any more questions you folks have out there, just throw them in the chat. That's what we're here for. All right, Jake, hit us with your
Yes,
next
indeed.
drinking buddy
We are
here.
We're here for that, and we're here to talk about Derrick Henry. Let's be honest, I think that's the core reason that we even have this episode here is so I get my time to talk about Derrick Henry. I've talked about him a fair bit already throughout the off season, but Derrick Henry going as RB9, I get it, and I'm not even that angry about where he is ADP wise, but I'm going to smash it every single time at that ADP.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been bad the last couple of years, which is the perception. People are watching Derrick Henry and he looked bad or he looked worse. He did as prime Derrick Henry. I just beg you to contextualize it a little bit. Derrick Henry had one of the worst offensive lines in Tennessee the last couple of years. He was getting hit behind the line a lot. And his game is not to be this elusive jump cut, avoid guys at the line running back. It's not who he is. But if he's allowed to get any semblance of a head of steam, it's game over. And he still has been doing that the last couple of years. His yards after contact, as great as they've ever been. It's great as they've ever been. He goes to an offense now that should allow that part of his game to thrive in Baltimore. There's been some reshuffling with their offensive line, but it literally cannot be worse than what he had the last 2 seasons. And look, he didn't have a guy like Lamar Jackson to take away attention from defenses either. Defenses having to play these two guys simultaneously as rushers is why they get paid the bucks. Just the bucks, not even the big bucks. That's why you get paid the bucks, is to have to face off against guys like this. And I would be fucking terrified if that were me. Luckily, it's not. Lamar Jackson also does not steal away touchdowns from his running backs the way that some other rushing quarterbacks do. It's not like Josh Allen. It's not like Jalen Hurts. Lamar Jackson averages about 5 rushing touchdowns per season himself. So yeah, he'll still get his. But Derrick Henry should be in line for easily 10, probably closer to 15 touchdowns this year. Gus Edwards had like 13 touchdowns last year in this same offense. I think Derrick Henry is being still a bit underappreciated. If you're looking at Saquon Barkley at running back 4, which is his ADP right now, or Derrick Henry at running back 9, it's Derrick Henry all day, every day for me, baby. I'm not even batting an eye at that. Will Derrick Henry be on your – he obviously won't be on your team in our league. But in other leagues, will Derrick Henry be on your team?
Yeah, actually, I was just pulling up. I am doing a draft right now, doing part of Polly's playoffs. Uh, Shane Barrett, friend of the show. So we are in it's a super flex tight end league, and I actually drafted Derrick Henry as my second running back in the 4th round, and I thought that was a hell of a steal, getting him that late. So if I'm able to get him in the 4th round, I will draft him. I will smash him there the entire time. I think, yeah, he is going to outplay that ADP all day long. I think he's going to be a top 5 running back this year. I really do. Like you said, we've seen what this offense in Baltimore has done. They let go of guys that they've kind of platooned over the last few years, but have been very, very good and very good for their team. So they wanted to bring in a guy that they could rely on, that they can run the ball with. They want to be a run first offense. As you said, Lamar Jackson doesn't steal goal line touches. You don't bring a guy in like Derrick Henry to have Lamar Jackson run in touchdowns at the end zone. Like, you're going to use Derrick Henry to get those dirty yards. So, and we haven't seen any sign of him slowing down yet. It's going to happen eventually, but I've refused to bet against him at this point because he just continues to do it. So I love this. I wish I would have put it as my drinking buddy first, but yeah, I love this one, Jake.
Yes. All right. Who's next on your list?
All right, sticking with the running backs, I'm going to say James Cook, and I'm going to be honest. I had a hard time picking a running back when I was going through the list here because you don't want to take the guys that are like super high, kind of like whatever. Okay, yeah, Saquon Barkley or Kyron Williams or CMC. Like you just don't necessarily want to take those guys. And James Cook, I've been a little bit down on throughout this offseason, but as the offseason's kind of come around, as I've heard more about this change towards the end of last year, when they fired their offensive coordinator, brought the new one aboard, they became a little bit more run heavy. Maybe that coincided with Diggs kind of with the decline there. But I I think that James Cook, I'm coming around to it. I think that he has an opportunity here, and I know it's kind of opposite of what we were just talking about with uh, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, where Josh Allen does kind of take those goal line rushes, but the way that James Cook was utilized last year, I really just see him becoming that wasn't a flash there at the end. I do think this is going to be a sign of how this offense wants to evolve. And, Josh Allen came out this offseason himself and said, he's going to have to end up changing his style of play at some point because he knows he's not going to be able to take that wear and tear and all that pounding. So, and you're getting James Cook at RB13, just outside the top 12. It's a spot where all the elite guys are already gone. It's like he's the best of that next tier, in my opinion. So if you're kind of stuck with running back, or you draft one early and kind of wait, and you still want a guy that has good upside, I think James Cook is your guy. And like I said, I think he's going to end up surprising people this year. Oh, and I lost Jake. All right, and he's back.
I'm back, baby. But I'm doing it through this just because. God, this is annoying. All right, in any case,
So,
I'm gonna move
so
us along here to
well, we gotta
George.
before you do that, Jake, we have another question in the chat. This one from Albert here that says, speaking of James Cook, I got a keeper question. So James Cook in the 7th or Zay Flowers in the 8th, and it's a half PPR league.
James Cook in the 7th, Zay Flowers. That's Zay Flowers for me, very easily. But I'm less of a James Cook enthusiast than you are. Obviously, he's not my drinking buddy. Zay Flowers, I know it's not great because it should be a rushing offense more in Baltimore. But Zay Flowers is still kind of the only guy besides Mark Andrews that I'm worried about in that offense really catching passes. So I like that discount for him, but I'm guessing you would prefer James Cook?
I would. I mean, it's really close though, because I do like Zay Flowers for this year as well. You're only looking at a round difference here for the keeper. It's not like it's a big swing. But yeah, I would definitely do James Cook only because it's half PPR, so you get a little bit more bump with the running backs in that aspect. And for the reasons I just espoused here, with my love of James Cook as my drinking buddy for this year. So thanks, Albert, for that question. Appreciate it. So yeah, let's move on then to your wide receiver here, George Pickens, as you have up on the banner.
All right. I'm going to try my best to do this without throwing Arthur Smith under the bus very much. It's going to be difficult. Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh, which initially led me away from guys like George Pickens. I didn't really want anybody from that team. And slowly, I've come to realize perhaps I was a bit too harsh with Arthur Smith and his decisions on some players. Some decisions he made just unexcusable, unforgivable, but he's rarely had a combination of competent quarterback plus top tier level wide receiver, or even top tier adjacent level wide receiver. which I think that George Pickens is. The only year he really had it, 2 years, I guess, was 2019 and 2020 when he was the offensive coordinator for the Titans. He had Ryan Tannehill and he had A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown put up 1,000 yards in his rookie season. Didn't crack the top 20, unfortunately, for wide receivers, but he was hovering in the area. He was wide receiver 30, I believe, in points per game. And then the next year, A.J. Brown really went off with Tannehill. And they had Derrick Henry there. They had my guy Derrick Henry in that backfield. But A.J. Brown was able to put together a wide receiver 6 season in points per game with limited passing. And that's the thing that scared me away from Arthur Smith initially, was they're not going to pass enough. So I want an offense that's going to be, chucking it 600 times a season. And that's not going to be the case here in Pittsburgh. But luckily, there's no competition for George Pickens' target share. We got Roman Wilson for right now, who himself, I guess, got dinged up, but he's a rookie. We've got maybe if Brandon Ayuk goes there, that's why I'm terrified for that possibility. That would cut into George Pickens' target share almost certainly. However, if it's Russell Wilson who's starting, it's not like he's a guy who attacks the middle of the field. Almost no quarterback threw to the middle of the field less than Russell Wilson last year. He was either behind the line of scrimmage or deep moon ball. And that deep moon ball is what's going to carry George Pickens, hopefully, well past his wide receiver 28 ADP right now. I can't get him into my top 12 wide receivers, just can't do that. But he's not far off. He's just on the fringes. And I would take him over guys like Brandon Ayuk if he stays in San Francisco. I would certainly take him over guys like Michael Pittman, who are going well before him, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, this kind of tier of wide receiver that I don't feel ultra confident in and has more competition for targets than George Pickens does.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I don't know that I can get fully on board with this one, Jake. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
It's just I do think he could have some sneaky upside this year, but he's too flash in the pan for me. He's just too boomer bust, especially where he's being where you have to draft him right now. What did you say he was?
Wide receiver 28.
So I mean, yeah, he's going as a wide receiver 3, but chances are he could be your wide receiver 2 on a team. And I guess I would just personally, it's just how I like to construct my roster and how I play. If he ends up being my second wide receiver on my squad, I wouldn't be really comfortable with that. I want someone with probably a little bit more consistency. If he was like my wide receiver 3, yeah, that'd be, and that value fell to me at that point, then yeah, I think I'd be a little bit more comfortable with that. I just don't trust him in this offense. I mean, I'm hopeful with Russell Wilson there and hate to say it, Arthur Smith going there. I think he's probably one of those that's a much better offensive coordinator than head coach.
Bingo.
So hopefully that translates to this offense, and they do turn it around this year. And let's be honest, it can't get a ton worse than what it was the last couple seasons. But I understand where you're coming from here, Jake. I just don't know that I can get fully on board.
Let me do it this way. I want to try to work my way up the ADP list. I'm going to convince you just even this much. I'm going to convince you this much to get on board with him. Would you rather have George Pickens or the aforementioned Zay Flowers?
I think Zay Flowers.
Ooh, interesting. I would take Pickens for sure. Would you rather have Pickens or Malik Neighbors, rookie for the Giants?
Oh, that's real damn close. I could go either way. I would probably go with Pickens at that point, though.
Me too. Let's move it up a little bit further. You're talking about boom bust guys, which I think is the issue with lack of consistency. Him or Devontae Smith going at wide receiver 22? Clear number 1 target on his team versus a guy who
I know
Same volatility, but with A.J. Brown in the way.
Yeah, I would probably go with Pickens, although that might be the line there. That one's like razor thin.
Well, and then we got guys like Stephon Diggs at wide receiver 20. I don't even want to dignify that with a response. It should be George Pickens 1,000% above Stephon Diggs. But all right, I feel good that I at least moved the needle this much here about George Pickens. You don't have to move the needle on this next guy, but I do want to throw this out here. I think it should be a rule from this point forward that in order to have a guy as your drinking buddy, you have to know how to spell his name. And I don't think I've seen you spell this man's name correctly one time since we've been doing this podcast, but I'll let it slide for the sake of this guy being your drinking buddy.
What? That is not true.
That is true. Look at the show sheet right now, and then you look at what I put up on the screen here because it is not the same. Just want to say, but you expound.
It's a typo. That's all it is. Fast fingers. I would never do such a thing to a guy I love so much. I would never be that shameful towards him. Yeah, I think to all of our listeners this offseason, I think you knew this was coming for me. I have waxed poetically about Deontay Johnson all offseason here is just one of those guys I am trying to leave every single draft I come out of with him. He is currently going as the wide receiver 38. And while, yes, he had a very disappointing year last year, as we're talking about Pittsburgh, he comes from Pittsburgh. They trade him in the offseason to Carolina. And people are thinking, oh, that's not really an upgrade in the offense. But Bryce Young was a rookie last year. So he's got that rookie season under his belt. You would expect growth between season 1 and season 2, just being more comfortable at the NFL, learning the playbook a little bit better, having a full off season under strength and conditioning coaches in the NFL, all that good stuff. And we saw what Adam Thielen did last year for a good chunk there at the first half of the season. I mean, he was wide receiver 5 there for a while. Like he was ridiculously targeted and had ridiculous efficiency. But Adam Thielen, no shade to Adam Thielen, but he's old when it comes to the NFL age. Like, he's old. So it doesn't surprise me that he kind of fell off the cliff a little bit. And this offense had, more issues than just that. But this was obviously a guy that they thought would be a good part of their team. You don't trade for a player like this that's young yet. And we've seen him be a ball hog because that's all he was in Pittsburgh. I just don't understand how he's going at wide receiver 38 right now. It has to be recency bias because of how poor the season was last year, or maybe over the last year and a half. But I think that's going to drastically change. And I can't get enough of this guy because he's just the price he's at. There's just no way he's going to perform worse than this, barring injury.
I am so mad that you have him as your drinking buddy to the point that I'm going to make you draft him in round 4 of our home league. Otherwise, I'm going to take him from you just to prove a point. It is outrageous. Wide receiver 38. You look at some of the guys going around him, and there's just no competition to me at all. So Deontay Johnson is kind of the only game in town still in Carolina to some extent. You mentioned it with Adam Thielen, and he's way better than Adam Thielen. Just his level of separation, that's what Bryce Young needed. Hopefully Dave Canales can get Bryce Young a little bit better than what he was last year. He's done it with other guys. He did it with Baker last year. He did it with Geno Smith the year before. So Dave Canales could be the guy to unlock that too. Deontay Johnson could have a top 12 finish, and it wouldn't shock me. Wouldn't shock me one bit.
God, my pants got tight here just saying all that. I love it.
Well, dare we loosen them back up by talking about tight ends, our least favorite position to dive into?
Oh, we must. No, this is positivity here. It's our drinking buddies. So come on, Jake.
All right. Actually, I'm very excited about mine. But if past history is any indication, that means you should stay far, far away from Greg Dulcich, tight end for the Denver Broncos. I'm not known for my good tight end takes, and that's why I just don't want to have to talk about him. But this seems like an obvious diamond in the rough to me. Non-smart guy. If we just look at Greg Dulcich in his rookie season, because that's really all we have to work off of. Last year, he played like 2 halves of a game, and then he was injured for the rest of it. And that's the only knock against Greg Dulcich that I can find is, well, the guy might get injured. And as you said earlier, yeah, we don't want to diagnose individual players necessarily as injury prone, especially to the point that they're going as tight end 32 in drafts right now, when Greg Dulcich in his rookie season for the games that he played, which was the vast majority of the season, he was on pace for 94 targets, 700 yards, and 3 touchdowns before he got injured. That's his rookie year. In any other situation for a tight end, we're geeked about that. Instead, we've cast this guy off who could very well be a top 2 target in the Denver Broncos offense this year. You've got Cortland Sutton still hanging around. That's legit. Jerry Jeudy's gone, for whatever you thought about Jerry Jeudy. Sean Payton hates Marvin Mims as much as I like him, so I don't think we have to worry about Marvin Mims. The rookie Troy Franklin, who had this great college connection with Bo Nix, the quarterback that they drafted, they don't like Troy Franklin very much right now. There has to be a legitimate target, and I don't know that it's coming out of the backfield necessarily. That backfield looks like a bloodbath right now. Samaje Perine could be cut, who was one of the leading target earners on that team last year. Everything is pointing up for Greg Dulcich as a just last round tight end dart throw. And I think he should be drafted closer to like round 12 at least. And he's just not going to be. Nobody's going to do that. I'll do that. I'll happily do that, but I don't have to. So Greg Dulcich, if you're looking for the free play, all right, I fucked up. I didn't get the tight end that I want. I didn't get Laporta. I didn't even get Jake Ferguson. I'm going to kick the can down the road. Kick it to Greg Dulcich, man. That's what I say.
Yeah, that's a good call, especially because we know that, we want tight ends to be at least the number 2 option on their team. That's where the fantasy goodness comes from. And as you said, there's no real clear option outside of Cortland Sutton on who that number 2 could be. So if Dulcich is healthy, why not? And especially where you can take him in drafts, like he's a guy that if you don't want to draft him because you probably don't have to, let's be honest, he'll probably make it onto waivers. He's a guy you just click that button where you want to put him on your watch list for later in the season. And then if whoever the guy you drafted isn't performing, and you could pick him up for nothing, and you wouldn't even have to waste draft capital on him. But taking him at the end of the draft, your last couple of rounds, if you totally punted the position, totally on board with that. I think that's a good call.
Whew. We did it. So I can't wait to revisit this next year when Greg Dulcich finishes as tight end 55. We'll have a celebration
basically.
over that. All right. Take us home, Dustin. Who do you want to wrap up with?
Yes. So my tight end, and to round out this episode, is Tyler Conklin of the New York Jets. And I think I've talked about him a little bit here in the offseason now and again. But I think he's got some sneaky upside. And like you, Jake, this is a guy that if you miss out on these earlier guys, he's probably one that you could just wait, punt the position. How about drafting Conklin and Dulcich together as your 1-2 tight end combo at the end of your draft? I think you'll be set. So the reason why I like Tyler Conklin is he's got Aaron Rodgers back this year. We've seen Aaron Rodgers support tight ends in the past. As we were just talking about with Dulcich, could maybe be the number 2 target on his squad. You've got Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall maybe would be the number 2. Who else outside of that do they really have? I mean,
Mike Williams for his routine 5 games,
which I don't buy. Like, I just that's a question mark. So I just we all know how particular Rodgers can be. So if he ends up getting a good connection with him over camp, he could be someone that he looks at more often in the offseason. And with the terrible quarterback play that this offense has had over the last few years, Tyler Conklin has had 87 receptions the last 3 years. Or no, 87 targets, I think it is. I don't wanna mislead anyone. It's
Targets
87
makes more
targets.
sense.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
87 receptions would have been amazing. No, 87 targets. So, I mean, he's getting a decent amount of looks every year. The one thing that killed him last year and probably why he isn't being talked about a little bit higher, no touchdowns. I mean, so that is gonna regress. Like, you are gonna see touchdowns this year, and with an offense that should be much more prolific with Rodgers at the helm, I don't see any reason why Conklin can't step up and be that 2 or 3 outside of maybe, like I said, Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall in this squad. And again, you're drafting them at the end of your draft. You don't have to spend draft capital on him. He's a good dart throw, but I think he's a guy that could pop off this year. There's always those surprise tight ends every single year. A guy that isn't really on anyone's radar that ends up top 5, top 6. Like, it just happens, and I think Conklin could be the guy this year. I really do.
I don't have an issue with it, really, because of his cost. It's the same argument. Take a stab. He could be a top 2 target. Now, I still don't
Mhm.
love the idea of putting my trust into Aaron Rodgers for this season in any capacity. That's why I'm still a little scared of Garrett Wilson's ADP, frankly. But you can do a lot worse because you're not risking anything truly here with that. So I
Mhm.
respect it. Yeah, let's get the Conklin Dulcich combos into the drafts. If you're out there listening or watching, and if you do follow this advice and draft Dulcich and Conklin, just share your roster with us. I want to see how that works out, just punting that tight end position towards the end.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And who knows, Jake? It'll probably be one or both of us that are doing that at our home league draft here in a few weeks.
There's a decent chance of that for sure. Can't confirm or deny.
Yes. Any final thoughts here before we sign off for the evening, Jake?
If you are interested, if you live around the Ohio area, or even if you don't, if you've never been to the Fantasy Football Expo, I encourage you to check it out. You can still drive out there, buy tickets at the site. So again, especially you folks who live out there, it's going to be a blast. If you are going out there anyways,
Mhm.
come find us, come say hi. It's going to be a joy. I can't wait.
Yes, and I'm going to apologize preemptively here for anybody that I met out at the expo the last couple years and I forget your name. Don't take offense to that. I'm terrible with names. I'm good with faces. I'll recognize you, but I won't get your name. So don't take offense to that. I'm putting that out there right now, folks. But yeah, definitely come up to us, say hi, chat us up. We'll share a drink or two. It'll be a great time, and it's just a great networking to sit and BS with a bunch of like-minded degenerates that probably your significant other at home just doesn't understand. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. But yeah, we'll be out there Friday.
Yes, sir.
We'll come back, do a show next week. Partially recovered from the expo. It'll be a lot of fun. But no, I'm looking forward to it too. I think that's where we'll leave it for this evening. Enjoy the preseason football games while we've got them coming up this week. Football's back, baby. It's back. And make sure you are subscribing to us on your podcast feed, YouTube. You get notified when we go live every single week, all that good stuff. Join us in the chat, especially as we're getting closer to your drafts here. You have draft questions as your dynasty leagues, maybe some of the more casual players are getting awakened because football is finally happening. You have trade questions, like our friend Albert in the chat. Ask us questions. That's what we're here for. We'll answer them. You can find Jake at Jake Trowbridge. You can find me at FF Dusty Dog, and you can find the podcast at Drinking Fantasy. All those are on Twitter. And with that, folks, if we don't see you at the expo, we'll see you next week. Keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers, FFers.